On Monday, October 25th, 343 finally gave us an in-depth look at what we can expect from Halo Infinite's campaign, and among that overview was our first look at Harbinger. First mentioned by Escharum during his 2020 monologue to the Chief, the identity of Harbinger has become a major mystery. Some people thought it might be a codename for Cortana, others hoped it might be a way to bring back the Didact without alerting fans. While we still need to wait for the final game to get definitive answers, today I thought it would be fun to speculate on the Harbinger's origins and goals, at least as much as we can. First, let's start with what we know of Halo Infinite's timeline thus far. In October 2559, the Master Chief and Blue Team, Fred 104, Kelly 087, and Linda 058, were deployed to the colony of Reach to recover 4 items for Dr. Halsey, the creator of the Spartan 2 program. 3 of these items were cryo-bins that seemed to contain clones of Dr. Halsey's brain, leftovers from the creation of Cortana in essence. The 4th object was a lockbox with the sword-based logo on it, whose contents remain a mystery. 2 months later, approximately December 13th, 2559, the UNSC was operating on Zeta Halo. From the information we've been provided, it seems that the UNSC was in the middle of their efforts to trap and delete Cortana when the Banished, quote, ambushed them. A battle ensues and the UNSC loses badly. Several people are killed or missing in the aftermath, while a lone Pelican pilot is left to drift in the void for the next 6 months. In that time, the Banished have continued their operations on the now damaged Zeta Halo in cooperation with a new being known only as Harbinger. She holds a great disdain for the Forerunners and even seemingly for their chosen successors, humanity. But what is Harbinger? Where did she come from? Why does she hold this grudge? We can't say for certain, obviously, but I do have one idea. Before I present my idea though, I'd like to run through a few of the other ideas I've seen floating around in the ether since Harbinger's reveal. One of the earliest ideas following Harbinger's reveal was that she might be a prelate. While that was quickly shot down in the canon fodder that followed, there was still talk of her being a female San Shayum. Harbinger has some pretty obvious differences from the San Shayum we knew from the original trilogy, but those were all males. Could Harbinger instead be a female San Shayum? In my opinion, probably not. Female San Shayum haven't been described in much detail, but they do make a few minor appearances within the lore. Again, we don't get much from those appearances, but female San Shayum do seem to retain the same general appearance as males, such as their long necks and large eyes. Harbinger's neck is elongated compared to typical human expectations, but certainly not the snaking San Shayum length, and her eyes are rather small compared to the rest of her head. If she were a female San Shayum, she's quite the unique specimen. Her mouth also has an insect-like quality when it moves. It's hard to spot, but it is in the footage. In my book at least, Harbinger is not a prophet. The next idea I'd like to tackle is whether Harbinger is a precursor or a precursor creation of some kind, maybe even a precursor AI. I've seen a lot of ideas that can all generally be grouped together under this category, Harbinger having some connection to the precursors, and I think it's rather easy to see why.
The Forerunners' lies are at an end. I am the Harbinger of the truth. You are not the future.
Harbinger again has some major beef with the Forerunners, probably a justified one on some level given what we know of them. Forerunners would regularly move species from one planet to another if they wanted the planet in question for any reason. They policed quote-unquote lesser species, basically based on a version of a divine right. And most infamously, they wiped the precursors from the face of the galaxy, if not the universe. If Harbinger has any connection to the precursors, she's probably justified in her hatred of Forerunners. And while she's hostile towards Reclaimers, an oddity considering humans were meant to be the next species tested for the mantle of responsibility, there could be any number of reasons for her hatred. Precursors are still individuals capable of independent thought and action. Not every precursor has to share the same ideals. So, again, could Harbinger be of precursor origin? It's certainly not impossible, and there's a lot of details we know about Harbinger that fit in with the idea of a precursor connection. However, there's one detail that pushes me away from the idea of Harbinger being of precursor origin, and that's 343's goals for Halo Infinite to tell a simple story. Anything precursor related would have a ton of EU baggage that would need explaining, and while 343 are certainly capable of that, I don't think they want to dive into the deep end of lore right off the bat. Our final alternate theory for today is a rather interesting one. If we go into the Sanghelios level for Halo 5, we can find old murals in the ancient ruins, ones which have a notable and distinct resemblance to Harbinger. But what are these ruins? Well, luckily the game gives us some information. When the player approaches these murals, Vale explains some of their meaning. They depict a pre-Covenant burial ceremony, and there's a message that translates as, "Here they serve at the feet of the gods." There's some additional dialogue that can be triggered, but it seems to be more about general Sangheili culture than what these murals are depicting. Anyway, looking at the murals themselves, we can see iconography similar to the features we see at Sunayan, and some bird-like icons. Combined with Vale's statements, these murals are likely depicting a visit to Sanghelios by the Forerunners millennia ago as they bury the Guardian we later awaken. These bowing figures are obviously Sangheili, so the Harbinger-like beings are likely Forerunners. Still, one has to ask why they look this way. Well, that answer may be within the Guardian Chambers, one we are familiar with, the Warden Eternal. When Osiris visits Meridian, we get to see what a Guardian's burial chamber looks like. In there, we can see dozens of chambers that look like they hold bodies for the Warden Eternal. It's very likely that a similar chamber exists on Sanghelios, there to guard the Guardian. So then, it's probable that the way the Forerunners are depicted in these murals was influenced by the Warden's appearance. Maybe these paintings were made years, decades, even centuries after the Forerunner visit, so the depiction of their gods was influenced by the Warden bodies that remained in the Guardian chamber. Maybe the Forerunners who buried the Guardian wore combat skins that resembled the Warden Eternal's armor. Or maybe the Warden himself was the one who buried the Guardians across the galaxy, sealing himself in the Guardian chambers to await the Reclaimers. And there still could be other explanations. There's definitely more to address with this mural, such as what exactly the Sangheili were doing under Forerunner leadership, but that's a discussion for another day. Do these murals depict Harbinger's species on Sanghelios? Probably not. Then again, I did speculate that there could be a connection between the Harbinger and Warden, given some of the similarities they share. However, these similarities could easily be coincidence, so for now, best not to read too much into them. I'd love to find out that these murals and/or the Warden do have some connection to the Harbinger, but for now, I'm not holding my breath. So, if the Harbinger isn't a prelate or a Sancheyum, a precursor or a precursor construct, and wasn't hinted at in Halo 5, what are her origins? Why does she hate Forerunners and anything to do with them? Well, I think I have the beginnings of an answer, and it all goes back, as all things tend to do, to the Forerunner Flood War. While the Halo rings were the plan the Forerunners ultimately used against the Flood, you'll recall something we were told back in the days of Halo 3. Know that 1,000 other plans were tried and failed. The Halos were the last resort, but not the first option. A few years ago, I made a video detailing what we know of these other plans, and I think the Harbinger, perhaps even her entire species, was part of yet another plan. It's hard to speculate about how Harbinger might have been used against the Flood, but I do think she was part of some planned alternative to the Halos, just like the Thanolekgolo sealed within Alpha Halo. And like those Thanolekgolo, Harbinger was sealed away within a Halo ring, in this case, Zeta Halo. And like the Didact, there she remained to nurse a grudge over the next 100 millennia. Whatever the Forerunners did to Harbinger, it was apparently so shameful they erased all record of it from Zeta Halo's archive. In Halo Point of Light, when visiting Installation 07, we're informed of this gap in the Halo Ring's record, though no details about why it exists. As the book itself never revisits this point, I would call that an obvious nod to the gap in the record having to do with Halo Infinite. And if that's the case, the erased record is very likely related to Harbinger or the Auditorium, the two new things at the center of Halo Infinite's story. We'll ultimately have to wait for the full details on Harbinger, her origins and motivations, but I do firmly believe that they are tied to the Forerunner's search for a solution to the Flood. Now, before we wrap all this up, I can't talk about Harbinger without addressing the Skimmers, the other new class of enemy that was recently revealed to us. Looking at the armor alone, we can see some strong visual similarities to the Harbinger's armor. I'd even take it further and note that the legs of the Skimmers kind of resemble Harbinger's legs, as though there's a direct connection between them. Maybe Harbinger and Skimmers are the same species, a species that perhaps exhibits an extreme form of sexual dimorphism. Or perhaps they're related species, both from the same planet but their species diverged a long time ago. Or perhaps the Skimmers were subjugated by the Harbinger's species, or Harbinger herself. Whatever the truth may be, the Skimmers and Harbingers are likely connected in some significant way, at least in my opinion. Perhaps more mysterious than her connection to the Skimmers are the origins and reasons for Harbinger's alliance with the Banished. Last year, we were told that the Banished had allied with the Harbinger, that they both
honor the will of Atriox.
Especially now that we've seen Harbinger and heard from her a bit, I have to wonder why she and the Banished are allied, and why would she even have an interest in honoring the will of Atriox? The short answer, in my opinion, is that Harbinger is just using the Banished for her own ends, using their zealous loyalty to Atriox to her advantage. We have yet to see Atriox in this game, other than in background hologram form, and the way Escharum talks about honoring his will, to me, makes it sound like Atriox is at least believed to be dead, or at least missing, as of Halo Infinite's setting. So, what happened? Well, here's my idea at the moment. The Banished ambush the UNSC at Zeta Halo and a big battle ensues, involving UNSC, Banished, and created forces. The battle results in a Banished victory, a devastating loss for the UNSC, and a major blow to Cortana's plans for the galaxy. Why the Banished attacked I couldn't say for certain. Maybe they simply wanted the tech of the Halo at their disposal. Atriox was certainly interested in one during Halo Wars 2. Or maybe they knew about the Harbinger and planned to free her and recruit her. Atriox has been shown to go out of his way to recruit talent he recognizes. Whatever the case, in the aftermath of the battle, Harbinger was released and Atriox went missing. Using the confusion to her advantage, Harbinger makes a pact with Escharum to, quote, honor the will of Atriox, while secretly serving her own ends. That's my theory for the moment, anyhow. Naturally, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Harbinger is? What is her ultimate goal? Do you agree with the ideas I've presented here, or do you have some alternatives? And if you'd like, consider jumping over to the Halo Canon Discord and joining the conversation there. But for now, thank you for watching. Stick around for the Patreon shoutout, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Horospus patrons. First, there's Hope, then we have Freight, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Man in the Dark, Keisha Dila, Daddy Anarchy, Great Scott Productions, Jumpy Sucks Balls, and Lone Ronin 117. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits, such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you really enjoy this, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.